The night had started like any other. I was curled up on my couch, wrapped in a soft blanket, sipping on some chamomile tea. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old wooden floor settling. I felt safe here, alone but comfortable. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the trees, rustling leaves in a gentle rhythm that almost felt soothing. I had just finished a long day at work and was ready to unwind, catch up on some reading or maybe watch a movie. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. But then, as the clock ticked closer to midnight, something in the air shifted. It was subtle at first, a sudden stillness, like the world was holding its breath. I noticed it when my phone vibrated softly on the coffee table. Strange, I thought, because I wasn't expecting any calls, especially this late. I glanced at the screen, but it was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, unsure if I should answer or just let it ring out. The logical part of me wanted to ignore it, to not get involved with some random stranger's call, but curiosity nudged me forward. I picked up the phone cautiously. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The line was silent at first, just a faint crackle, then a soft, indistinct sound. I strained my ears but couldn't make out any words. It felt like someone was breathing heavily on the other end, or maybe whispering, but I couldn't tell what. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Who is this?" I asked, but no answer came. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until finally the line went dead. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was just a prank or a wrong number. But deep down, I felt unsettled. The warmth in my chest had drained away, replaced by a creeping coldness that spread through my limbs. The quiet house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. Every little sound, the ticking clock, the rustling leaves outside, seemed louder, sharper, as if the night was watching me. I told myself to calm down, to not let my imagination run wild. But the uneasy feeling lingered, like a shadow just out of sight. I looked around the room, seeking comfort in the familiar. The soft glow of the lamp, the worn cushions on the couch, the stacks of books on the shelf. But nothing could chase away the sudden weight pressing on my chest. It was as if something unseen had slipped into the night, something that didn't belong. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was safe. But that night, the quiet didn't bring peace. Instead, it wrapped around me like a cold, heavy blanket, unsettling and impossible to ignore. It was well past midnight when the phone suddenly rang, piercing through the silence of my apartment like a sharp, unexpected alarm. I froze, my heart skipping a beat as the shrill sound echoed off the walls. Who could possibly be calling at this hour? I wasn't expecting anyone, and I certainly hadn't told anyone to call me so late. The ringing continued, relentless and jarring, pulling me out of the drowsy comfort I had settled into. For a moment, I debated whether to answer it or not. The logical part of me wanted to ignore the call and let it go to voicemail. Maybe it was a telemarketer or someone who dialed the wrong number. But curiosity gnawed at me. What if it was something important, or worse, someone in trouble? Slowly, almost reluctantly, I reached for the phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I swiped to answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously, trying to keep my voice steady. But all I heard was silence on the other end. Just an empty, heavy quiet that felt unnatural. I strained to listen, expecting someone to speak, to say something, but nothing came. The silence felt thick and oppressive, as if the phone was a gateway to something I wasn't meant to hear. I swallowed hard and repeated, "Hello? Is someone there?" Still nothing. Just the faintest trace of breathing, too soft to be certain, but enough to send a chill down my spine. I wanted to hang up, but my hand hovered over the button. There was something about that silence that kept me rooted in place, a strange magnetic pull I couldn't explain. The quiet breathing grew more distinct for a moment, then abruptly stopped. A cold wave of panic started to creep through me. Suddenly, a whisper, barely audible but unmistakably there, scratched through the silence. I couldn't make out the words, only a broken, fragmented sound that sent my mind racing. My skin prickled with fear, and I gripped the phone tighter, afraid to drop it but desperate to end the call. Just as I was about to hang up, the line went dead, leaving me in stunned silence. I sat there, heart pounding, the ringing still echoing in my ears even though the phone was silent. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. That call wasn't just a wrong number or a prank. It was something else, something unsettling and inexplicable. I couldn't shake the feeling that the phone ringing out of nowhere was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. When the voice finally spoke, I knew instantly something was wrong. It was faint at first, a barely audible whisper that seemed to crawl through the phone speaker like a ghost drifting in the darkness. I held my breath, straining to make sense of the words, but the tone alone sent a chill straight through me. It was a voice I recognized, and yet it was impossible. It shouldn't exist anymore. The voice belonged to my sister. Or at least, that's what my brain told me, even though my heart screamed otherwise. She had been gone for over a year now, gone suddenly, without warning, leaving behind an emptiness that no one could fill. I had replayed every memory, every conversation we ever had, convinced somehow that I might have missed a clue, something that could explain what really happened. But hearing her voice again, coming through this cold, lifeless phone line, shattered everything. I gripped the receiver tighter, my knuckles white. "Is that you?" I whispered, barely daring to hope. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it breathed out something indecipherable, a broken fragment of sound that twisted inside my chest like a knife. It was her, the timbre, the cadence, but warped, distorted as if it were coming from someplace far away, or maybe even somewhere it shouldn't be. Fear bubbled up like a dark storm inside me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell her I missed her, but the words caught in my throat. How was this possible? How could she be speaking to me through the phone when I had buried her memory deep inside myself? My mind scrambled for logic, but there was none to find. It felt like the world had tilted on its axis, and I was left clutching at the shards of something I couldn't understand. The voice grew softer, almost pleading, and a wave of cold swept over me. I wanted to hang up, to shut it all out, but something kept me listening. There was a message hidden beneath those broken whispers, something urgent and terrifying, but just out of reach. My heart hammered as the silence returned, thick and heavy. When I finally let go of the phone, my hands shook uncontrollably. That night, the voice haunted me, not just in my ears, but in every shadow, every flicker of the dark. It was a voice that shouldn't exist, yet there it was, echoing through the silence of my world, refusing to be forgotten. The moment the call ended, a cold wave of fear washed over me, seeping into every corner of the room like a creeping fog. I sat frozen on the edge of the couch, my breath shallow and quick, as if the very air had thickened around me. The familiar walls of my apartment suddenly felt like they were closing in, shrinking the space until there was nowhere left to hide. It was like the shadows themselves had come alive, stretching long fingers toward me, whispering threats I couldn't quite hear but somehow understood. I tried to steady myself, telling my racing mind to calm down, to remember that it was just a prank or a malfunctioning phone. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The silence that followed the call was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the streetlights outside casting eerie patterns on the walls. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains felt amplified, as if the room was suddenly alert to some unseen presence. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the couch, trying to anchor myself to something real. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears like a warning drum. Fear spread through me in waves, not just a momentary jolt but a growing tide that threatened to drown out reason and sense. It wrapped around my chest tightly, making it hard to breathe, as if the very room was squeezing me with invisible hands. I glanced around, searching for any sign of what might be wrong, but everything seemed exactly as it should be. The dim glow of the lamp cast soft shadows, the books on the shelf sat untouched, and the window was closed tight. Yet, the unease lingered, thick and heavy, as if the walls themselves held secrets I couldn't see. The silence was too complete, too unnatural, like the calm before a storm that I could feel but not yet see. I wanted to turn on all the lights, to fill the room with brightness and banish the creeping dread. but my body refused to move. The fear was paralyzing, rooting me to the spot and filling the space with a weight that pressed down on my very soul. It wasn't just fear of what had just happened, it was fear of what might come next, of the unknown waiting just beyond the edge of my vision. The room had become a trap, and I was its prisoner, caught between the comfort of familiarity and the terror of the unseen. When the call finally ended, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The silence that followed was deafening in its own way, thick, heavy, and unyielding. I stared at the phone in my hand, the screen dark and blank, like a door that had slammed shut behind something I wasn't ready to face. I wanted to convince myself that it was over, that whatever nightmare had started with that ringing phone had now come to an end. But the terror didn't fade. It stayed with me, lingering like a shadow that refused to disappear. I set the phone down slowly, almost afraid that even the slightest movement might unleash the fear bottled up inside me. My heart was still pounding, a frantic rhythm echoing through my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to get up, to leave this place, to run far away from the silence and the memories it stirred. But I was rooted in place, trapped between disbelief and dread. The room felt colder now, the walls closer, as if the fear had taken physical form and was squeezing me from all sides. I tried to focus on something else, anything else, to push the thoughts away. I reached for the lamp, flicked it on, flooding the room with harsh light. The familiar glow didn't help. Instead, it only made the shadows sharper, the silence louder. I kept thinking about the voice I'd heard during the call, the way it trembled and faded into that haunting quiet. It was a voice that shouldn't have been there, words that didn't belong in the night. And even though the call was over, those words echoed in my mind, twisting and turning like a dark knot I couldn't untangle. My hands shook as I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold on to some sense of safety. But the terror had settled deep inside me, planting seeds of doubt and fear that refused to be ignored. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the thin walls of my home could no longer keep the darkness out. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge, even the wind brushing against the window, felt like a reminder that I wasn't alone. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. Time lost meaning in the haze of fear. Sleep was impossible. My mind kept replaying that call, the silence on the other end, the voice that shouldn't have existed. The call had ended, yes, but the terror remained. It was there in the quiet, in the shadows, in the way the night seemed to breathe around me. And no matter how much I wanted it to, that fear wasn't going anywhere.